Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something that's, well, probably shaped every classroom you've ever been in, whether you noticed it or not. Stereotypes.
Hmm.
We're going to dig into Christine Reyna's really compelling 2000 paper, Lazy, Dumb, or Industrious, When Stereotypes Convey Attribution Information in the Classroom.
Exactly. And what makes Raina's work so powerful is this argument that stereotypes aren't just, lazy generalizations.
Right.
Instead, she shows us how they work as these incredibly efficient, but often really misleading shortcuts. Shortcuts for explaining why some students do well and, well, others struggle.
Right. So, like when you hear boys will be boys for disruptive behavior, maybe, or that assumption that certain groups are just naturally good or bad at math or something.
Yeah,
Raina's work helps us see those aren't just throwaway comments. They actually carry these hidden assumptions about why those things are happening, the cause.
precisely. The underlying cause.
And that's what we're diving into today. We want to understand how these sort of baked-in explanations affect students' self-belief, their motivation, even how others treat them, which, ultimately shapes their whole learning path.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's unpack this. At its heart, what is Reina actually saying about stereotypes acting as these attributions?
Well, Raina's core idea, basically, is that when we hold a stereotype, we're not just making a statement about a group. We're implicitly offering a causal explanation for their perceived traits or performance.
A causal explanation, okay.
Think of attributions as like the stories we tell ourselves about why things happen. Raina says stereotypes give us these ready-made stories about why certain groups tend to behave or achieve in specific ways.
Okay, can you give us some concrete examples from the paper, something that really makes this click?
Sure, the paper uses several really clear ones. Take the stereotype blacks are lazy.
Okay.
Now, that isn't just a crude description. It's presented as an immediate reason for potential underachievement.
Right, it's the explanation.
Yeah. Or girls are bad at math. That offers a quick, ready-made reason for why maybe fewer women are in STEM.
Mm.
Or, on the flip side, Japanese are hardworking. That's used to explain economic success. Even that movie title, White Men Can't Jump.
Ha! Yeah.
Though it's pop culture, it illustrates the point. It gives a quick, supposed explanation for differences in athletic ability.
It's like these stereotypes just hand us a pre-written script for understanding, or maybe more accurately, misunderstanding group trends and even individual experiences within those groups.
Exactly.
So if a student from a certain background struggles, the stereotype might be the first explanation that jumps to mind, kind of overshadowing other more complex things.
Mm-hmm. And if another student excels, it might just get chalked up to a group thing, not their individual effort or situation.
It's a dangerously efficient way to label people, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And for you, the listener, seeing this explanatory power within stereotypes is key. It shows why they're so persistent. They offer what seem like simple answers, even if those answers are totally flawed and just keep inequalities going.
Right.
Understanding this framework stereotypes as attributions is really the first big step to unpacking their actual impact.
Okay, so we get that stereotypes act as these explanations. Now, Reina goes deeper, right? Using Wiener's theory to understand the kind of explanations they are, what are the key dimensions she looks at?
Yeah, she uses Bernard Wiener's model of causal attributions. It basically breaks down our explanations for success or failure along three key lines: locus of causality, controllability, and stability.
Okay, locus, controllability, stability. Break those down a bit.
Sure. Locus asks, is the cause internal to the person, like their ability or how much effort they put in, or is it external, like how hard the test was, or just bad luck?
Internal versus external. Got it.
Then controllability asks, could the person have influenced it? Did they have control over the cause?
Okay, controllable or uncontrollable?
And finally, stability asks, is the cause likely to stick around? Is it consistent over time or more temporary, like a mood?
Stable versus unstable. Okay, so how do these three dimensions usually show up in the stereotypes Reina studies? Are there patterns?
Yeah, and this is really striking in her analysis. Stereotypes almost always imply stable qualities.
Always stable. Interesting.
Yeah, whether it's perceived low intelligence or being inherently lazy or having some natural talent, the characteristic the stereotype points to is usually seen as something fixed, something that doesn't change easily.
Okay. What about locus? Internal or external?
Most stereotypes tend to point to internal factors, something about the person or the group itself.
Usually internal.
Usually, but there are exceptions. Like sometimes people might blame, say, ghetto schools for minority underachievement. That's an external attribution.
Ah, okay. So mostly internal, almost always stable. What about controllability?
That seems to be the one with the most variation, depending on the specific stereotype.
How so?
Well, think about it. A stereotype like laziness clearly suggests a controllable cause, right?
Mm.
The person could just choose to work harder.
Yeah, you could control that.
But a stereotype like low intelligence, that implies an uncontrollable cause, something seen as innate, fixed, beyond the person's power to change.
Ah, I see.
And this difference in controllability has really big consequences for how we react to people.
Okay. So based on these dimensions, internal, external, controllable, uncontrollable, stable, unstable, Reina identifies three main attributional patterns that stereotypes tend to communicate. What are they?
Right. She outlines three key signatures. First, internal, stable, and controllable. The classic example is the stereotype of laziness.
Okay, internal, stable, controllable. Laziness.
Second, internal, stable, and uncontrollable, like the stereotype of low intelligence or lack of innate ability.
Internal, stable, uncontrollable.
Low ability, got it.
And third, external, stable, and uncontrollable. Like the belief that a group faces persistent systemic discrimination they can't overcome on their own. External, stable, uncontrollable. Systemic barriers. And Reina has a figure you mentioned kind of mapping how these different patterns lead to different outcomes in the classroom. Let's start with the first one. Internal, stable, controllable. Like laziness. What happens when a negative thing, like failing a test, gets blamed on that?
Well, when failure is explained by something internal, seen as stable, and believed to be within the student's control, like a teacher thinking they just didn't try hard enough, it often triggers negative social reactions,
Like what?
like anger, frustration, blaming the student, and being less willing to help them out next time, maybe fewer second chances. Reina even points to research showing teachers are more likely to punish students for failures they think are controllable, like lack of effort.
Yeah, that makes a certain kind of intuitive sense, doesn't it? If you think someone chose not to try, you're less likely to feel sorry for them. But what about the flip side? When something positive happens, like a student acing a project, and it's attributed to an internal, stable, controllable stereotype, like the model minority idea that some groups are just naturally hardworking.
In those cases, the positive outcome tends to bring positive reactions.
Mm.
Trust, praise, rewards, maybe higher expectations for them in the future.
I heard.
That model minority stereotype, for example, might lead teachers to really expect a lot from those students, maybe give them more challenging work.
So it really cuts both ways. Attributing things to controllable factors heavily influences our reactions, good or bad. How does this affect how students see themselves?
Well, for the student, succeeding through effort, that internal, stable, controllable factor that can feel great, it leads to pride, self-efficacy. They feel like they earned it.
Sure.
But if they fail and they blame it on their own lack of effort, that can lead to guilt, that feeling of, I could have done better.
Guilt, not shame.
Right, guilt specifically. And while guilt can sometimes motivate you to try harder next time, Reina points out that for students already dealing with negative stereotypes, this constant self-blame can actually backfire. It can become really damaging, especially if the real problems are actually external barriers they can't control.
That's a really important point. It could create this cycle of beating yourself up even when the system might be part of the problem. Okay, now let's shift to those internal, stable, uncontrollable stereotypes. The really damaging ones suggesting some groups just lack ability. What happens when failure gets blamed on that?
This is where it gets particularly insidious. When failure is attributed to something internal, fixed, and uncontrollable, like a teacher thinking, well, they're just not a math person, the first reaction might actually be sympathy, maybe even some initial offers of help.
Sympathy.
But here's the catch. Because the perceived cause is seen as unchangeable, it can lead to this sort of learned helplessness, both in the teacher and the student. There's this underlying belief that real improvement just isn't likely. So, long-term, it might lead to neglect, lowered expectations.
Wow. That sounds incredibly disempowering. How does that hit the student emotionally, and what does it do to their motivation?
Instead of guilt, like with controllable failures, this often leads to feelings of embarrassment and shame.
Shame. That feels heavier.
It is. And it can really crush motivation. You feel powerless to change the outcome, so why bother trying? It's a major blow to self-esteem. And research consistently links attributing failure to these internal, stable, uncontrollable causes with poorer grades down the line.
This seems like the perfect place to bring in stereotype threat. How does Reyna's framework connect with that whole phenomenon?
Oh, absolutely. Reyna's analysis fits perfectly with stereotype threat, the work by Steele and Aronson. She argues that the fear of confirming a negative stereotype, which, again, often centers on these internal, stable, uncontrollable traits like low ability, that fear itself can sabotage performance.
Wow.
Think about those classic studies. African American students doing worse on tests when their race was highlighted beforehand. That activates the negative stereotype about intelligence. Reyna's model suggests this activation creates anxiety. It takes up mental bandwidth.
Cognitive load.
Exactly. Cognitive load, hindering their ability to actually perform their best. And interestingly, interventions that shift the focus, like saying a test measures effort, not innate ability, those have been shown to reduce stereotype threat, which supports this link to controllability.
So the stereotype itself becomes a hurdle. Wow. What about seemingly positive internal uncontrollable stereotypes? Can they also cause problems?
Yeah, even ones like Asians are naturally good at math. On the surface, seems okay, maybe even helpful.
Right. Boost confidence.
It might in that specific area, but it can also create huge pressure to live up to that expectation. What if you're not naturally gifted at math? You feel like a failure within your own group stereotype.
Ah, okay.
Plus, it can discourage exploring other interests or talents. And it pigeonholes people, right? It overlooks everything else they might be good at or interested in.
Yeah, it's like being put in a box, even if it looks like a nice box from the outside. Okay, let's hit the third pattern. External stable and controllable stereotypes. This is where bad outcomes get blamed on outside forces, like systemic discrimination. What are the effects here?
Well, when negative stuff is blamed on external factors, like ongoing bias or discrimination, it does take the blame off the individual. That can foster group solidarity, maybe increase support for programs trying to fix those systemic issues.
And maybe it protects self-esteem.
Exactly. It can act as a buffer. If you face negative feedback, you might think, well, that's just bias, rather than there's something wrong with me. It protects your sense of self-worth.
That sounds potentially adaptive, like a coping mechanism. But are there downsides to always blaming external uncontrollable factors?
Reyna does add a note of caution. While it protects self-esteem, consistently attributing all negative outcomes only to external barriers might, over time, reduce a person's sense of agency or motivation.
How so?
If you truly believe the system is totally rigged and impossible to change, you might think, why bother putting in the effort? It could lead back to a different kind of learned helplessness.
Right.
And there's another angle for positive outcomes.
Yeah.
If success is achieved, but it's attributed solely to something external, like affirmative action, rather than your own hard work and ability.
It might lessen the feeling of personal accomplishment.
Exactly. It can undercut that sense of pride and mastery.
So it really sounds like understanding the mix of internal and external factors is key. Now, Reyna also brings up secondary attributional processes, specifically how teachers' own expectations, maybe shaped by stereotypes, get communicated. How does that work?
Yeah, this is crucial. Teachers' own beliefs about why students succeed or fail, their attributions get communicated, even if they don't mean to. And it happens in subtle ways.
Not just saying it out loud?
Not just directly, like in feedback, although that's part of it. It's also indirect. Their tone of voice, facial expressions, how much attention they give certain students, the difficulty of tasks they assign.
Can you give an example of that indirect communication?
Sure. Reyna mentions Dweck's research, which found teachers sometimes give different kinds of feedback to boys and girls, unintentionally.
Like what?
Like maybe praising boys more for effort, good try, but praising girls more for neatness or seeming natural ability. You're so smart.
Ah, subtle difference.
Very subtle, but it sends a message. It might tell girls that success is about some innate thing they have or don't have, while boys learn that effort is the key to overcoming difficulty.
And other nonverbal stuff, too.
Oh, yeah. Even the emotion a teacher shows can signal their underlying belief. Think about pity versus anger. If a teacher shows pity towards a struggling student, that student might interpret it as, my teacher doesn't think I'm capable.
Whereas anger might signal, my teacher thinks I didn't try hard enough.
Exactly. Pity suggests low ability, uncontrollable. Anger suggests low effort, controllable. The student picks up on these cues.
It's like creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, almost. The teacher's maybe unconscious low expectation gets communicated, the student internalizes it.
And then potentially performs down to that expectation. Precisely. Students are really smart about reading these signals. They build their own explanations for their successes and failures based partly on what they pick up from teachers. And that feeds right back into their motivation, confidence, how engaged they are.
Okay, so given all these ways stereotypes can negatively shape things through attributions, does Reina offer any solutions, any interventions that can help counter these effects?
Yes, thankfully. She talks about the potential of attribution retraining.
Attribution retraining, what's that?
These are interventions designed to help students reframe their explanations for setbacks. Instead of blaming failure on stable, uncontrollable things like, I'm just bad at this, they learn to attribute it to unstable, controllable factors like, I didn't use the right strategy, or I need to put in more effort next time.
So, teaching them to see challenges as temporary and solvable?
Exactly. People like Forrest Sterling have done research showing this can really help students build resilience and improve performance. Shifting that mindset is key.
That makes sense. What else can educators do, maybe more day to day in the classroom?
Reina really stresses the importance of educators just being aware of their own potential biases, consciously working to create a fairer environment.
How?
Well, one big thing is explicitly communicating that learning is challenging, that making mistakes and failing sometimes is normal, and that effort and using good strategies are the way forward. Make it clear that ability isn't fixed.
Normalizing struggle.
Yes. And also using simple classroom management techniques.
Yeah.
Things like making sure all students get chances to participate, not just the ones you expect to know the answer,
Mhm.
or using random methods for group work, so pre-existing biases about who works well together don't dictate everything. Little things can disrupt those stereotype-based expectations.
So, wrapping this up, the big picture here is that stereotypes aren't just passive labels floating around. They actively work as these powerful, often hidden explanations in the classroom, explanations for success and failure. And these explanations, these attributions have real, tangible effects on how students see themselves, how motivated they are, and ultimately how well they learn.
Precisely. By understanding the attributional structures inside stereotypes, internal, external, controllable, uncontrollable, stable, unstable, we can start to see these subtle forces at play. We can become more aware.
And hopefully for everyone listening, this deep dive has kind of pulled back the curtain on just how much meaning and impact can be packed into a seemingly simple stereotype. It shows how these hidden messages shape how we see others and maybe even how we see ourselves.
Which leads to a really good question to maybe chew on after this. Think about your own assumptions, maybe unconscious ones, about different groups. How might those be subtly shaping your interactions, your expectations, whether it's at work, school, or just out in the world?
Yeah.
And what small shifts, just in perspective, could help create environments that feel more fair, more supportive for everyone? It's worth reflecting on the attributions we all make, sometimes without even realizing we're doing it.